Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is another episode I promised to record, and this one's gonna be about Flexbox in React with TypeScript, of course. As you can see right now, what I have is just basic TypeScript and React project. And to explain the issue, I'm gonna first add some stuff that we need. And basically what we need is styled components, because that's the best, or at least my favorite solution when it comes to styling. So npm install styled components and types styled components. Okay, and the idea for that episode came to me when I was looking back at my previous project that I was working on. Okay, we should be good. Cool. Let's clear that one out. Okay, and let's create a new file, and I'm gonna call it box, because we have to have something that would go inside of our Flexbox. So that's not going to be anything special. Let's import styled components and CSS, styled and CSS, and we'll provide some props here for our box. It's gonna be width, which is gonna be optional, height, which is going to be optional, and background color, which is going to be, as you can guess, optional. Okay, and let's quickly create that. So that's going to be a div that takes box props. Okay, and then we can use those props to create the CSS properties. So it's gonna be something like this. We'll have width, height, and background color. We're gonna return some CSS. So width, it's gonna be width or 100 pixels as a string. I'm providing width and height as a string, not as a number, because, well, I would like to pass everything that's possible here. So maybe 50% or 20 RAM, or maybe provide an auto value. And this cannot be done with a number, so we're gonna just use the string here. The same goes for the height, and default and background color is gonna be background color or blue. And with that wonderful short styled component, we can already use it. So let's just pop a box right into here and just import it and get rid of everything that's not needed, and voila, we have a box. Okay, so the problem that I wanted to discuss is using, or to be more precise, reusing Flexbox in React. You see, when building complex layouts, what we often do is we have to position it on our screen somehow. And for example, let's say that you have to position an image somewhere on the screen, or few images. So basically what you would do, or what I did so far, is to go to the styled components and create something like an image wrapper, which would be a style div with display flex. Okay, and then maybe in some kind of details page or something like that, you'd have a row or column of buttons, and you'd also have to use Flexbox to position it. So you would go and create button wrapper, and that's also is going to be display flex, but maybe this time with a different flex direction, right? So basically what you're doing is every time you're forced to position something on screen, you're creating those wrappers or containers or whatever you'd like to call these, but you're basically reusing, creating new style components, but they're pretty much the same. They're all based on Flexbox, right? So maybe we could figure out a smarter way of doing that and create something more reusable. And that's what I want to show you today. So let's go to our wonderful app, and let's add a header so we know what's going on. Let's say basic Flexbox, okay? And let's say we have three boxes. Maybe we can change the width of one, maybe a color of the other one. Let's say orange, and that's of course the background color. Right, and save that. Okay, so basically right now we have 3 boxes. I should also change color of that, say green, standing on top of each other as you would expect. Okay, so let's try and figure out how can we create this reusable Flexbox component. So I'm going to call it Flex TS, and let's start working with the basic props that we'd like to have here. So I'm going to import style, of course, and CSS from style components. Okay, then let's start figuring out our interface. Okay, so definitely what we like to have here is the most basic properties that we need to activate on our div, because we're gonna use a div, right? So first thing I would like to specify here is a container boolean, and that one's going to decide whether given div should be treated as a block or flex, right? Because when you're activating a display flex, you're doing it for all children of the div, right? So you only need to do it once, and then you can use the properties like align items or justify content to position the elements, HTML elements that are in the children of Flexbox. So basically, when you're building a tree of HTML elements, you only have to activate Flex for the top one, and then after that, each children can be positioned and can be set up with the Flex properties. Okay, so that one is to activate Flexbox, right, for top element or component. Okay, so with that figured out, basically I can start adding the stuff that we all will know, and that's align items. And here I'm gonna create a set of values because they're well defined. That's stretch, center, and so on. And I could use enum, but I believe that using strings in that case makes for a simpler API of our component. Because if I would create an enum, you would have to import that enum everywhere you'd like to use our Flexbox, and we're trying to create something simple and reusable. So baseline, and of course there's initial and inherit. Okay. Next property, of course, that should be justify content. Okay, and they're pretty much the same, but a little bit different. Flex start, flex end, space between, space around. I hope I'm not missing any. Center, initial, inherit. Okay, then for the direction, so flex, maybe just direction. We have column, and we have row, of course. Another thing that we have and we should definitely add is flex wrap. Wrap, no wrap, and reverse, and that should basically define how our component behaves when we run out of space for children. And for now, that's it, but we'll extend that API and add more to the props as we go. So let's try this. It's going to be style div that takes flex props, and we have to be smart about how we'll handle that. So let's unpack our props. And we'll of course return some CSS here. Okay, so we have container, align items, justify content, direction, and flex wrap. With that, we can start using the most basic things. So display. Looking for the container. Oops, get rid of that container. We can create flex and activate that, or just use good old block display. Then justify content and the return CSS. Justify content to be equal of value of justify content. Yes. Okay. Then align items and CSS. Align items. Basically, yeah, we have to do that check because it might be undefined, because we made everything basically optional. Align items, then next thing we're checking for is direction and CSS. Flex direction should be of value direction. And we have that and flex wrap. Okay. So flex wrap and CSS flex wrap is equal to value of flex wrap. Okay, so that's not all the properties that we'll define, but let's see what can we achieve with that. So did I export? Yes, it's exported. So flex, and let's see what happens if we do just that. I believe I did something wrong. Yeah, justify content should be basically everything should be optional. Okay, so let's see that now. Well, as you can tell, nothing changed because we didn't specify the container property, so it's still treated as a block. But as soon as we pass container here, as you can see, the flex is now activated and we can start playing with it. Okay, so let's do justify content, and we should get the autocomplete space around. That's great. If you'll see here, we can't really passing align items here wouldn't make a difference, and that's because our container for now has the height that's matching the content. So maybe that's another thing we could add to our Flexbox. So let's do height. I'm gonna use a string here and also max height, and apply those here. So as you can probably tell by now, building something like that is rather easy. Because what you basically do is you pass the CSS properties that you'd like to use here, and then just you basically apply those as needed. Where the true power of that solution comes from is the reusability of that. And that's max height applied. So now I could do something like height, let's say 200 pixels, and then doing something like align items, like start makes sense, right? Because align oh, this is over it. Okay, yeah, and it would be better if I could apply background color here. So yeah, now you can see that we can specify both axes here for X and Y. Actually, you know what? Let's just for fun, let's add that. So background color string, and this is the same as what we got here. So background color and CSS background color PG color, and let's give it some color. Let's do, I'm out of ideas. Let's do pink. I cannot find, of course, we have to unpack it. Okay, so that's great. That's really, really cool. But still, there are few other properties that we have to specify here. So yeah, the few things that we're missing are built in still into the flex itself. So we have to have the flex property as a string. We have to have flex basis, and that's going to be a number, and flex grow as a number, and flex shrink as a number, or basically flex, well, flex basis can be a number. Okay, and let's try and specify those in here. So that's gonna be flex basis, flex grow, and flex shrink. Okay, so moving here, we can do something like additional flex properties. I can copy this, say, oops, and say flex, flex, flex. And if you don't know, the flex property is actually a shorthand for the flex shrink, flex grow, and flex basis. So as I will show you, you can swap those. It just depends which notation do you like most. So flex grow, that's flex grow, and that's flex grow. Okay, then we have shrink and basis. Flex shrink, shrink, and basis. Flex basis. Okay, that and that and that. Cool. So what do we need this for? I'm gonna try and show you. So let's create another example here. H1 and H1, and I'm gonna tell flex grow, flex basis, flex shrink. Okay, so let's create Flexbox here. That one's gonna be container. We're gonna make it gray. And I'm gonna say align items center and specify content space around. And what I'm gonna do is the children of that are not going to be simply the boxes, but boxes that are also wrapped in flex, because the flex and flex shrink and flex grow property are actually the flex properties that are applied to children. Okay, so let's create that. We'll create one flex and second flex, and I'm gonna create the box one. Actually, that can be self-enclosing, and box 2. And we're almost ready to start talking about it, but I'm going to create a width of auto here, height of 300 pixels, and background color of red, and that one's going to be just with auto. And let's see what we've got. Well, surprisingly, nothing spectacular. And why is that? This is because our boxes have a width of auto, and that would mean that they will set their width according to their parent. And this, the parent, doesn't have a width. And we can easily fix that by providing the flex basis property here. So I'm gonna do, I think that's gonna be, yeah, that's gonna be wrong, because that should be a string. So let's fix that real quick. Flex basis, change that to string. Now I can say that this could be 400 pixels, and just for fun, this could be the same. Okay, and now, as you can tell, our boxes are already showing, and they have the width of 400, just like the parent. So when you have a Flexbox, you can specify the base width of given element using the flex basis here. Okay, so it's really cool. What else? Oh, and as we get less and less space here, you can see that they're shrinking proportionally, meaning this, when the width is less than the sum of flex bases, in our case, when this is less than 800, right, because we have 2 times flex basis 400 pixels, both children are shrinking proportionally, meaning this is taking a half of the space that's left, and this is taking a half of a space that is left. Okay, so what do we use the flex shrink for? Okay, let's now provide the flex shrink values here. So flex shrink and flex shrink here. Okay, I'm gonna set it here to 5 and that one to 1, and let's see what happens now when we run out of space. They're no longer shrinking proportionally. Basically, what is happening is we have a flex shrink of 5 for our red and flex shrink of 1 for our blue, meaning our red rectangle is gonna shrink 5 times the space that the blue rectangle, right? what is happening is that we have an addition of 5 plus 1 equals 6, right? The space that's left here is being cut into like 6 pieces, and then the children that has the bigger flex string would shrink less, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? So the bigger the number here, your children, the less will the children shrink, okay? And I could bump it even more to 10 and 1, and as you can see, this is now, the red is now shrinking really fast. Or maybe something less, like 2 and 1, right? So it's still shrinking, but it keeps its proportion. Alternatively to that, you have, of course, the flex grow, okay? So let's say, let's give it a 5, right? And let's give it a 1. Okay. And now something really interesting is happening. The flex basis is basically being ignored, right? And the children are growing with the container, but now, as you can see, there's disproportion, and the child that has a bigger number in the flex grow grows more than the one that has 1. And we can really exaggerate it by saying something like 10 here, right? Or let me show you here. Should be able, yeah, I can bump it up, and as you can see, it takes more space. Even if you hover over it, you can see the arrow is presenting the amount that given children had grown, and this dashed part left of the blue arrow that you see on your screen is the flex basis value, right? So if I go here and I will change that something like this, then go back, hovering over the flex grow, you can see where is the basis. And this is also interesting because the flex basis also specifies when the given element will start growing or shrinking, right? For the red rectangle here, it will start shrinking whenever the space that's left for it is less than 200 pixels, and will start growing right after the available space is more than 200 pixels. Okay, so that was nice explanation of flex grow and flex shrink, I hope. And these values, flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, can be written as one by using flex, right? So this is flex, first is flex grow, second is flex shrink, and then it's basis. So basically, to provide these 3 properties in one go, I would do something like 10 to 400 pixels. Okay, let's see that. And it should still behave the same. And I believe it does. Where is it? Yeah, you can expand that, and you have flex grow, flex string, and flex basis. Cool. Given that, what are other properties that are rather important when it comes to building the reusable flex component that we still need? Okay, Well, for once, I would definitely like to have an option to specify the margin, or maybe let's start with something way simpler. Of course, since we have the height and max height, we need the width and max width. So it's gonna be rather easy. Let's just go in here as width, and then add the max width. And let's unpack that. Okay, cool. We have that. Also, I would like to have a chance to specify a margin here and padding. And there are many options to do that, right? You must remember that when it comes to margin padding, you can specify one value, two values, or four values. And what I found to be the easiest is to use the array of numbers and calculate those numbers to REMs, to RAM units. So let's try that. So padding and margin. Oops. So padding, and that's gonna be optional and will be number or number array. And margin, or it's gonna be a number and or number array. Okay, let's unpack it. Padding and margin. Great, and I'm gonna actually create helper function here to handle these two properties. So let's go to the bottom. And I'm gonna create something that I'm gonna call, it's not gonna be super elegant, and definitely there are better ways to write it, but hey, it works. I'm gonna call it handle margin padding, and I'm gonna pass a margin here, and I'm gonna create handle margin or padding. I'm gonna pass the padding and pass through as another argument. And let's figure out that function. So let's create handle margin or padding. I'm gonna take two properties, values, which are optional number or number array, and is padding boolean, also optional. Okay, so we have to figure out how to properly calculate our margin or padding. If there are no values, there's no point in calculating anything. If we have array of values, then we have to figure out what are we fighting with here. So basically, if we know that this is the array of values, then we have to look for the amount of the elements in there. But we have to do another check. If for any reason someone decided to pass more values than 4, I'm just gonna throw an error. Something like is padding padding other, just say margin can have 4 entries at most. Various entries, various at most. Okay. If not, then we have to convert the values into rems, as I said. So let's create a string for that. Convert values array to string. We're gonna take the values, we're gonna map, check each element. Let's say that's a v. Check where v is equal to 0. So return 0, else return v and the unit is rems. And then we have to join this with empty space. Okay, that's correct. I don't know why that was red. And now we can simply apply it. Is padding, then return CSS padding should be equal to the string. So here we're taking each value. We could, for example, have something like, let's say, oops, not that. We'd have something like 1 and 2 here, right? And you take each value, and I would like to convert it into a string that looks like this: 1 rem, 2 rem. And that's what we're doing here. For each value in the array, convert it to that value with added rem and separate it from the next value with a space. So that's that. Okay, if that's not a padding, we can definitely return margin, because there's no other way. It could be something else. Margin. This, okay, so here we're handling the case when we have an array. The other option is that someone just passes 2 to apply the padding or margin for margin top, right, bottom, and left, all with the same values. And that's also easy. If is padding, return CSS, oops, padding value values, because it's only one, okay, and rem. And then the last case is the same, but for the margin. Okay, and that should be it. And now we can use it, or are we using it already? We are using it. So now I can add padding and margin here. So let's try that. Let's add a margin here, and let's add 4 values. Okay, and let's see what we've got. As you can see here, we have the margins. Great. What if I would like to only apply the margin left? Well, that's rather easy. I know that that's the 4th number. So I just go 0, 0, 0, and 5. So that's cool. What other, and the same goes for padding, of course. To padding and let's specify just one number here, 3. And if I take a look at my flex, I can see that I have padding applied to all sides. Wonderful. Is there anything we're missing here? Yeah, two things. One thing that we've missed when it comes to Flexbox is that often items would like to position themselves. So we could go to here and just say, hey, we need align self. And the values for align self. Oh, let me check that. Okay, I believe there are only 4 that make sense here. So that's gonna be stretch, center, start, and end. Okay, and we probably need the same for justify self. Yep. Okay, so let's do that, and this is pretty much the same. Justify self. Okay, unpack it. You know the drill. Let's go maybe here and let's add these. So first, align self, CSS, align self of value. Come on, align self, and then justify self and CSS justify self, justify self. Great. So those should be optional too. Yeah, definitely. Okay. And what I can do now is, let me see, I could align self flex basic end, and now it goes to the bottom. Okay, that's really cool, because in a case where you have, let me copy this a few times. A case where you'd like to have one element aligned differently, now you can do it, right? The others here are in the center, and that one row here goes to the bottom. Okay, that's almost all. We just need one last set of properties. So let me create another example, and I'm gonna call it pushing away. Maybe there was that Linkin Park song, pushing away, push away. Pushing me away. Okay. I just called that pushing away. So let me just create a flex, and it's the starting point. So of course it's gonna be a container, and then I'm gonna take these. Let's actually create them like that. Copy a few times. Okay, now let's add a margin for each and every one. Let's see what we can. Okay, we've got that nice row here at the bottom. And let's say I would like the one last element to be on the other side, or actually even better, I would like to have these two last elements, let's color them red, to be pushed to the other side. Basically, you can do that by specifying a margin of that element, the left margin, to auto. Okay, so we have to take that into account, and I'm gonna add few properties here, and I'm gonna name them nicely. Call that push down. It's gonna be a boolean. Push left. It's gonna be boolean. Push right. It's gonna be boolean, and push top boolean. Okay, cool. Now this translates to setting the proper margin to auto. So let's unpack that. Push, 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 push. Okay, cool. And then here at the bottom, we'll handle this. So push down CSS margin top auto, because we'd like something to be pushed to the given side. We have to specify auto margin to the other side. Like when I want elements to be pushed down, the top margin should be set to auto. So the other way, push top CSS and margin top, margin down and margin bottom, Jesus Christ, is auto. Then push left, and it says the margin right to auto. Push right, and that sets the margin left to auto. Okay, so how can we use it? Well, that's rather easy actually. Let's say I would like to push elements to the right starting from here. So let's just call it push right, and here they are. And as you can see, this is happening due to the fact that we have a margin auto here, margin left auto. The other margins are as we specified them before. And that's gonna work also for a column. So let's try that. I'm gonna create a flex starting point, flex direction. Direction is column. I'm gonna specify a height here of 500 pixels, and I'm gonna start adding stuff. So let's add a flex, add a box. Yep. Okay, let's copy this like 2-3 times. This one I'm gonna make it red. Okay, and here I would like to push it to the bottom, so I'm gonna say push down. And if we go here, you can see being pushed down because of the margin top property, right? And that's basically it. That's how can you create very easy and reusable Flex component with style components and React and TypeScript. Of course, you can add the properties here as you see fit and as you need, and form it so that you can use it in your project and it matches your needs. So it's gonna be all. Thank you for that, and I'm gonna see you in the next episode. Please, if you can, subscribe or like or leave a comment. It really helps to fight the YouTube algorithm, which is really ruthless if you ask me. So thank you again, and I see you in the next one. Goodbye.